Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we're gonna carry on with our ranking videos now. I know there was a bit of a pause, but I promise you I'll get the rest of them out as quickly as possible. Now it is likely they will stretch at the beginning of July, but this time around it's time to talk about the class specific rankings. So this is kind of like more generically, this video is also used to determine the order in which I will release my personal class rankings. And here, effectively, we're going to discuss the class relationships, which I believe, is going to indicate which classes are currently doing the best and the worst in the game, which have had some meaningful additions and which have had some more duds. So here we can see the old ranking for like half a year ago, which effectively didn't also take much of the changes at end of the year that came with the Glorious Guardians buff, like, release of Sentinel, Deadpool X-Force, Medusa, for instance, or Purgatory. And also, obviously, we have the Omega Days, Heart of Fire sale, take in consideration, and some new buffs, some new champion releases, and effectively the more recent trends of the game. Again, to be perfectly clear, when I do make my ranking videos, I do it with a mixture of my own personal views and opinions, as well as current game relevance and trends. In these ranking videos, metagame is taken in consideration, and by metagame I do mean Alliance War and Battlegrounds, because effectively I do think what gives champions the most value in the game is whether we use them when losing matters. We can use anybody we like and anybody we enjoy in a casual quest, because the worst thing that happens is we might need to restart a quest or throw a revive here or there, but effectively winning or completing that quest is guaranteed. If you do mess up and if you do lose like a Battlegrounds match or die in a war, there are no take backsies. Therefore, the champions that we rely on at large as community when losing matters, and you do not want to mess up at all, are the ones that give my most value add. Now, that does not mean you cannot get a ton done with just about any other champion in the game. You absolutely can. There are examples of that, like Swede destroying content with the champion and Kamal Khan and Rogue and so on and so forth. But that's more down to the player. Not necessarily the best or most efficient thing to do. At the same time, I do believe that currently, aside from competitive content, you can get just about everything done with like Ascended 6 stars or 7-star rank 2s, like even for Eternity of Pain or Wheel of Fate that recently came out, we ended up using like 7-star rank 2s quite frequently there. So as long as it's not competitive content, I also do not see the biggest reason to take a champion up to a max rank if you're capable of doing that content with a lower rank, and rather use the catalyst on champions that will help me earn more catalysts. Anyways, so that's the mandatory disclaimers. So previously, Cosmic class was devastatingly bad, because none of the old top Cosmics were released at the time. No Galen, no CGR, no Hulkling, no Hercules, obviously. And they just didn't have much going on for them. And Serpent was freshly released. Obviously, he was a menace, but he could not carry the entire class. And then we have Skill. Skill was in similarly awful position, where just about everybody in Skill class that was, ranked up for any reason was effectively a defender. And now those defenders are kind of, to a degree, significantly less relevant than they used to be, because Kabam keeps pumping out more defenders. So a lot of, the Killmongers and Korgs have lost so much ground and faith. So that's definitely still going to affect Skill ranking, though. And then we had Tech, Mutant, Science, and Mystic for the first time in a while, and gave the first spot. So now, let's take a look at how things are looking at right now. So some important things to note. Again, we will be looking at what's changed for these classes, as well as some meta relevance and trends in which champions have kind of had a glow up, for instance. But I do think that previously Skill was second worst class, arguably the worst class, then it still is. And don't get me wrong, I do think Skill actually has had significant help. I think Skill has kind of improved a lot. One of the bigger improvements from all the classes, and therefore I do think just about every single class in MCOC right now is a much better place, kind from one, which I think is kind of falling behind a bit. but I do believe that skill class has made leaps and bounds. I do not think it has been enough to kind of like be on an equal footing with just about any other class in MCOC. For what it was, I do not think skill class is far behind, but let's take a look at skill's biggest victory so far. So obviously this year, they got 3 bangers, man. They are good. There's no question about it. Yelena is making a tremendous impact on the game right now. She's brand new, but you know, she's a force to be reckoned with. Okoye, the bald-headed demon, both of them are some of my most wanted champions. And Okoye obviously is putting in work. I do think her usage is kind of stabilizing now as well. With the next month, the infinite Okoye locks and silk locks going away, that's gonna hurt her a bit as well. And obviously she had like 15 bug fixes, but I do think she's a very, very good addition to the game. One of my favorite offensive champions right now as well. I do think she's super easy to use. She's kind of a refreshing champion where you do not have to worry about 50,000 different mechanics, currencies, and timers to watch. You just kind of hit the opponent and they die, and I love that about Okoye, one of my most desired champions in the game. And Lumitrix. Lumitrix is honestly, in my opinion, a great dub. He has somewhat half-decent defensive value. He's kind of unique offensively. He's not necessarily the fastest nuke, but he can take a wide variety of matchups, and he can certainly do some very, very interesting things, and I actually really do like him. For a while, I actually considered potentially taking him to rank 4 as well. And I still kind of do. I really do like the champion, to be honest. And he's definitely the type of champion I'm fairly decent at using Lumitrix as is, but I definitely kind of want to explore it further and kind of push the limits of his playstyles and what he can and cannot do, because he, again, has cool rotations, interesting abilities, and it just feels fresh and different. So I do think skill has gotten 3 very, very good additions, 2 of whom are great offensive additions. And then looking at end of the year, last year was not kind. Now, however, the Patriot is going to get a dupe, which is hopefully going to be significant enough to make him borderline relevant or usable. Silver Sable, again, was the worst champion of last year, but did get buffed, and now she's decent. She's not awful. And we have Bullseye, who's one of the best defenders in the game still. Yes, obviously he has counters like everything else, but Bullseye is also quite unique addition to the game, let's call it like that. Then, should have probably brought this up before, but we can check out in the Glorious Guardians crystal pool and also the Heart of Fire crystal, where we got Nick Fury as a 7-star added to the skill class. It's a huge dub for the skill class. You'd definitely argue him being the top skill champion at the moment, definitely one of the most present meta champions as well. He has some unique uses offensively with his second life mechanic, as well as, a defensive stalwart. Now, there are more champions that do nuke him, but without question, he still holds defensive value as well. Then, do we have an add-on? The Glorious Guardians champions? Where are they? Where's the Glorious Guardians? But I'm just blind. I'm probably just blind. That was not it. That was not it. That was not it. Well, the buffs anyways. We got Black Panther Civil War. So the Black Panther Civil War is also quite decent addition. I know some people really do like him. He can be quite nukey. And the Black Panther is also definitely putting in work in the game. So that, however, I think puts skill class almost kind of equivalent, because previously, again, if you remember, the most used and ranked skill champions were, Atuma and Korg and Killmonger, and we had like Mantis and Crossbones. Crossbones is probably top skill champion. And that was just about it. Shield has some gameplay visibility as well, but much of their core was missing, or just about all of their top champions were hiding behind the 7-star gate, as in Kate Bishop and Kingpin and previously Nick Fury and Stealth Suit Spider-Man and Valkyrie. So it definitely was looking absolutely atrocious to skill class. I think now they are on level. They are getting on par. Perhaps seeing how the game develops further, we might see them overtake a couple of classes in near future. They're definitely they definitely have made some of the bigger gains, but I still think they are ultimately towards the bottom of the class, because if you're taking a look at like how many really desirable skill champions there are right now, like really champions that you'd want to hunt for, we do have like Atuma, that's, you know, good, solid for sure. Got Bullseye, you know, we can maybe count in Shield. Crossbone's definitely there, so that's 4. Then, you know, let's say Lumatrix, Nick Fury, Okoye, so it's like what, 7. You know, Yelena. There are a few more, but they struggle to reach like a really solid offensive top 10 or even like a defensive top 10, because, you know, I think Korg has dropped quite a bit in his value as well, outside of some specific matters. So has Killmonger. And yeah, I still think they are on the lower end. I think, again, previously it was much worse. But it's not ideal for now. Especially because every single class has gotten some meaningful gains. And speaking of that, spot number 5, I'm going to be putting in Mutants. And now this might be controversial because a lot of people think that Kabam has been like giving Mutants infinite amount of love and Mutants are trashing the contest and stuff. It's not necessarily that much as well, because, well, let's take a look at the Hearth Fire Sale editions. That was APOC. APOC is arguably the worst pull you could get from Heart of Fire for competitive reasons. Now, obviously, he's cool and people love him, but the game has kind of moved on past him, and they didn't, you know, adjust him or tune him up in any way, shape, or form. So, since Heart of Fire Sale, APOC has been, like, for instance, completely invisible. And then we have the Cyclops buff, and the newly worked Cyclops. Oh, he's cool, he's fun, he's you know, interesting to use in some situations, so he can do some cheesy things, but as far as metagame is concerned, he's far from a raging success. He's like in occasionally maybe he will be useful type of pile, so I wouldn't say that he's like a massive reinforcement to the class. And then looking at the 2025 champions that we have come is Jean Grey and Gentle. I think both of them are fine, solid champions. I do not think they're like at the tippy top of the pack. Like, I think, yeah, Jean Grey is alright. She's fairly chunky defender, but again, if you know what you're doing, she can be dispatched with fairly reasonably well, and as people get more comfortable, that's not going to be as big of an issue. And Gentle, honestly, has been like more impressive to me overall. Not specifically for the current Battlegrounds meta, but in general, Gentle has been kind of like shining a bit more. But even that is not like exceptional. I do not think that's like at the tippy top of the metagame either. I think it's solid. I think it's good. You'd kind of rank it as 7 of something. And then we have last year, obviously we have Northstar, who hardly kind of see some play. We do have Dust, which I do think is seeing a very healthy amount of use. I do think Dust is actually kind of underrated. It's a shame she's blowing up my phone, or I would have kind of wanted to take her to rank 4, because I do think she's quite versatile and quite useful. And Dazzler and Negasonic. Negasonic has her kind of, I think at this point, redundancy issues with Dazzler as well, and my own personal problems. So I do think Mutants are doing well. But I don't think they're doing as well as many people think. We do have Captain Britain buff, which again was shining very brightly for a bit, but again, it's, what is the best I'd say? It's kind of pushed aside for now. It still remains to be seen how effective of a defender she is going to be, but I do believe that there are counters coming out for her fast and quick, because we're going to get the first Neuroshock immune champions, and besides that, there's not going to be much that's stopping her. We already have like Bastion, Jack, and, you know, Werewolf, and so I don't not think she's going to make like a massive defensive imprint either. And yeah, Mutant and Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister seems to have taken a bit of a step back as well for the current games. And current seasons and current metas that have been happening, so he's definitely been like far from the presence that he was like half a year ago. Now I still think we are going to see him plenty, and I do think obviously there's a tremendous amount of value, but looking at what's coming afterwards, I was struggling to place Mutant class and the next placement. I do think good arguments can be made for both, but I sincerely feel that Mutant class has the Onslaught, basically. Because Onslaught is arguably the best champion in the game, or one of the best champions in the game. And then there's fairly significant drop-off. And, you know, we do have Dazzler, which I think could at this point even argue for the second best mutant. But I don't think they perform like as consistently. I think, yeah, there's a kind of an issue of the quality at the top tier of the class, which is actually going to be kind of like a bit ironic with what I'm saying right now. But yeah, I believe that mutants currently are the second weakest class, despite the amount of love that Kebab has been giving to them. And the reason for that is I believe the tech class is kind of coming to their own. I know that a lot of people would place these two other way around. I get that. But I do think that there is a significantly large amount right now of tech champions that continuously prove themselves to be useful. And kind of like the tie-breaking factor to me was the release of FAM, and FAM definitely being significantly more present and valuable and current than APOC is. As well as then we have the comparison of Deadpool, X-Force, and Sentinel, which I do think they are, you know, relatively similar from the Glorious Guardians Crystal release, but I think FAM was the thing that kind of broke this out for me. In addition to generally Starkey just being a powerhouse in the game. I could never in a million years imagine Starkey being, you know, aging as well. And that's kind of like the crazy thing against Starkey and Spider-Man is that he continues to be an absolute behemoth of a champion, countering many of the current top biggest problems in vast majority of the metas. The fact that you can use Starkey against Photon in most metas, in Bullseye in most metas, against Zola in most metas, against obviously Onslaught. You use him against Gentle as well with parry heavies. He's actually very quick at taking down Gentle. And he's just kind of running amok. So the fact that Starkey exists there, the fact that they got FAM, which is significantly better than APOC, I kind of think Tech takes the fourth place. I do think they are slightly better than Mutants are. And let's take a look at their additions. So we have Zola, who's a defensive stalwart and, you know, a staple in just about every household right now. More so, I would say, than, let's say, Gentle or Jean Grey. Now, Jean Grey is cool as well, but I do think that, again, defensively, you know, Zola is having a bigger impact. Now, Bastion, you could say he's not as dominant in the metagame right now, but again, I do think there's that dichotomy of Jack and Bastion being very similar, and Jack just being slightly better for the battleground stuff, and Bastion being better for the Alliance War stuff and potentially some questing stuff. So I wouldn't say Bastion's like a bad ad at any means, but Zola is definitely up there as one of the better ones and more successful ones. And now Jack has gained tremendous amount of popularity, you know, with his ability to counter the Captain Britain, with his ability to counter, you know, Jean Grey and quite large amount of matchups. Then we have Prowler, who's, you know, still definitely absolutely significant and present in the game. Ironheart is kind of tearing it up everywhere aside from Battlegrounds, so it's not as impactful as, you know, for instance, Jack or Prowler, but I do think that provides a fair amount of added value because she's, you know, proving herself to be incredibly useful, again, just about everywhere except for Battlegrounds. And then if we are revisiting the Glorious Guardians Crystal, obviously there is the FAM, which is a very significant addition to the class, much more so than APOC. And then the buff champion was Sentinel, and Sentinel's kind of destroying everybody. Right. So, all that said, 1 second. We need to get back to the tech class. All that said, and the reason why I kind of took tech over mutants as well is like, on a quick glance, you know, how many kind of like what we would call meta or powerful champions that there are in tech class. Again, pending the circumstances, I do think tech class takes the cake quite easily because we do have the Warlock, we do have Starhand Spider-Man, we do have Shuri, we do have Shocker, who's doing incredible things, we do have Sentinel. Red Skull is, again, proving to be as kind of like mainstay staple tech champion just about through every meta as possible. Prowler, Penny Parker had been on a fairly good run. Omega Sentinel, again, mainly outside the battlegrounds, not necessarily in the battlegrounds, but, she's putting in decent amount of work too. Then we have Ironheart and Jack. And then, we definitely have Guardian still being an absolutely valuable powerhouse of a champion. Zola, Bastion, Fam, and Arcade also having a presence. So I do think that kind of offsets the Mutant class better. I think the biggest thing that Mutants have over Techs at the moment is Onslaught. I think outside of Onslaught, being like one of the best champions in the game, I think Tech class is kind of like more consistently capable. And that's why I'm currently slightly putting Tech above. Now moving on to top 3, I think unfortunately Science class has moved down. Previously, I think Science class was by far and away the strongest class in the game. I do think that has diminished since. Now there have been some significant additions to Science class and some less so. And let's first of all start with the significant and then discuss why they have kind of slid down a bit. In 2025, we have Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman is great. It still remains to be seen exactly how great and where she's going to land, but she's a quality champion. I think we can all realize that. I think she's more versatile than Spider-Ham. I don't think she's faster. I think Spider-Ham is a bigger nuke. Which one of them is a better defender? I'd probably argue for Spider-Woman because she has, better stats and she would be kind of like longer to kill. But again, Spider-Ham also has defensive capabilities. So I do think she's a very, very solid addition to the game. I'd personally probably value her like above Jean Grey somewhere, perhaps above Gentle as well, as in like very, very good ad. Then take a look at 2024 champions, and here we can start seeing a problem. Because we have Count Nefaria, who again I think is phenomenally good champion. I think he has a place in the game. I think he's very significant in every single game mode. Outside of Battlegrounds as well. And in Battlegrounds, again, he's a bit more of a meta merchant. In some metas, he's crazy good. In some metas, he's just quite not fast enough. But I do think there's an inherently large amount of value in Count Nefaria. And he's a very, very, finely designed champion. The problem with Science class and the downfall of Science class kind of comes with the amount of deaths. Okay, I'm not going to call Deathless She-Hulk a dad by no means. But again, she's not necessarily competitively the most present champion. None of the other Deathless champions are. She's great for some questing things. She's great for like Necropolis, some long for content. Not, Battlegrounds, not necessarily much of an impact in Alliance War. Spider-Punk is actually a champion that I personally really like, but it's pointless to pretend that he has a large metagame imprint now. In this current meta, he has gained some popularity, but overall, it is undeniable that, he's not the top G. He's not the one that you're trying to get and trying to dupe and trying to rank. He just isn't. And Leader, again, I discussed Leader. He's the best in the game at what he does. The problem is that we rarely need that. And again, he's hardly from like a mainstay type of champion or like incredible ad. And then in 2025, you could argue the worst champion added. So we can see that out of, let's say, 2024, 2025, out of last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, out of the last 6 champions, 2 that are making an impact, and 4 not so much. So that definitely has kind of slowed the momentum of Science class, in my opinion. Then we must recognize the fact that whilst Mystic class got Tigra and Tech class got Fam, and Skill class got Nick Fury, we get I-Bomb here. He's not awful. He's not Nick Fury. Not, garbage. He's not as bad as APOC in my opinion for competitive play. But he ain't Fam or Nick or Tigra. So, here we could characterize Science as well as one of the classes that kind of lost ground. Bottom 2. Out of all the 6 classes from Heart to Fire event, Science was in bottom 2. Nick Fury and APOC were significantly worse ads for you and your roster and your classes than Fam, Tigra, Nick Fury, or Dark Phoenix. So there you go. That's that. Then, for the Banquet event buffs, we got this fucking guy. I'd call him a useless piece of garbage, but that would be unfair to useless pieces of garbage because, and yeah, I know you have done cool things with Sentry. Somebody's gonna say that in comment section, but realistically, nobody gives a fuck about this champion. Like nobody. He had one use in game so far, which was like a turn to your pain, science skill path or whatever it was. That's it. And nobody cares. Now, the good thing about Science class, obviously, is Red Guardian. Red Guardian was a very solid add as very, very limited acquisition champion because, again, vast minority of the people got him, but it is a good add. Because if we're going to hold this against Red Guardian, we need to mention against Dark Phoenix as well. But, Red Guardian was added to the game. He's not wildly available, but he is a fairly positive influence. But compared to every other class, I think Science class has taken the most amount of L's, the most amount of wasted buffs, the most amount of wasted champion release, the worst exclusive 7-stars handed, so on and so forth. I think out of every single class, Science has taken the largest amount of L's in the last half year. And I think it's, somewhat fair. Even compared to like Cosmic class, Cosmic got Gallon added to the Titan Crystal randomly. Science class got Red Hulk. Now again, I'm not a massive Red Hulk hater, but when you open a Titan Crystal, do you want to get a Red Hulk? No. And that has kind of been the story in Science class. And just about every recent event, like when you open that Glorious Guardians Crystal, did you want a Sentry or did you want, I don't know, Sentinel? Wasn't Sentry. And yeah, Science has been getting the shaft more often than not from Kabam. So whilst I still think there is a ton of value in the Science class, whilst I still think that, we have Titania that's doing incredible things, which it can be frustrating at times because Intimidate seems to be, whatever type of debuff. Titania is doing great things. Photon's still like one of the more dominant champions in the game, in my opinion. We do have Neferia again. Occasionally Luke Cage can put up some interesting things. And then, there's still the Hulk Lock. We have Human Torch on the way. Void can be situationally awesome for sure. Then we have Thing. And again, new Spider-Woman. Spider-Ham is crazy. And, I'm not even going to start talking about Silk Lock. So I do still think there is quite a ton of value in the Science class. I do think they're taking more L's recently than any other class, and there is, I think, potential argument to be made that, that class potentially on Mutants may be overtaking her. So next up, second best class in the game, I think, is Cosmic now. Now, Cosmic still has a massive, massive problem. Cosmic is incredibly top-heavy. I do think that Cosmic class has been like revitalized and saved by effective existence of like 3 to 4 champions. So let's take a look at that, last couple of years here. So we do have Serpent, again, arguably top 4 champion in the game. And that is doing a ton of lifting there. Serpent putting in a ton of work there. Then we have Thanos, who again is incredibly valuable. Again, I think one of the top 4 champions in the game. Again, to be clear, I have maintained this idea that I believe Onslaught, Serpent, Thanos, and Photon are the 4 best champions in the game right now. I have said that for since they came out, basically. Since Deathless Thanos came out. And there you go. So I do think these two are putting in an enormous amount of work. They are, however, helped with, the arrival of Dark Phoenix. Now, again, she's not wildly available, but it is impossible to ignore her existence in competitive modes because, every Alliance war, you're going to face her. And, every big Ballion session, you're going to see her around. So whilst, the way she was made available, I think is wrong. Whilst I hope Kabam makes her more available in different ways for different people as soon as possible, she is making Cosmic class more relevant and more dangerous. And then, we do have new Caroline Dean, which is extremely hard to judge because obviously she's brand new, but she is set to be a very, very powerful offensive champion. She looks very powerful to me from what I have seen, and I do think she's going to be, joining them up there. But then we obviously do have the Hard to Fire champions. Well, sorry, not Hard to Fire champions. I've completely blanked out. Galen got added for them as a cosmic, randomly in Titan Crystal, which is quite huge for them. I do not think that Galen is as big as he used to be. I do not think he's going to be like as relevant and present as he used to be. And he's, arguably, I think, the weaker of the old Cosmic God. But I do think that definitely boosts them up significantly, because there are, situations where Galen can be very, very powerful. Also, coincidentally, Galen being one of the better options against Yelena, I think that is going to serve him a lot in terms of his popularity. So there you go. We have Galen. That's another huge buff for the Cosmic class. Scream, solid. I don't think Scream's like, again, at the same level as the champions I mentioned so far, but definitely putting in work. And, then everything besides that, like, let's say, top 4 core that Cosmic class has right now, I do need to mention Null. Obviously, Null has been doing very great in metagame. You can see increase in his usage and popularity with the 6 stones kind of like slowly being more available and more people having an option to invest 6 stones in different champions. And, there's still Medusa, who again came out as a Glorious Guardians champion. It was a very, very solid ad. She got like a tune-up, and, that's helpful and significant, and she is capable. And, Maestro is still doing things here and there. Nova, again, out as a 7-star now, and is putting in work. So I think in between their very, very top heavy core, they kind of have gotten enough support pieces in between Nova, in between Medusa, in between Maestro, in between Null, in between Scream, and, the buffed Phoenix, in between Vox being a very stable presence, situationally here and there, and kind of like a niche choice for niche metas. Gladiator kind of having a little bit of a comeback, as well as, and I'm very, very sorry to report this, somehow, unbeknownst to me, Beta Bill is becoming slightly relevant. You can see him added to people's decks here and there as well, because apparently he can, do some of the recent matches quite well. So I hate that horse. I don't like him, but he's become a bit more present. So if it wouldn't be for, Deathless Thanos and Serpent, I do think Cosmic would be right next to Skill. But I think in between Serpent, Deathless Thanos, Dark Phoenix, and the release of Galen, popularity of Null, Medusa's buff, I do think, again, being very, very top-heavy class, but a ton of weight is being put on the very, very tippy-top options. They are sneaking in there. I do think that Cosmic is currently kind of like the second trendy class, which again is not necessarily entirely of the quality of the remainder of the class, but Cosmic has always been like incredibly top heavy, and their best and their worst. And again, that's still, putting a bit of belief in Caroline Dean being good, and yeah, we'll see what happens with the Cosmic class, but I think they're being hardcore carried by the top of their class. Right, and the best class in the game, I think, at the moment is Mystic. I think at the moment, Mystics are kind of like the most versatile class. In every single situation, there will almost always certainly going to be a Mystic that works. And the way they approach things is also quite interesting, because they have moved away specifically from, the Nullifier being reliant on opponents having a ton of buffs, because they become more Mystic champions that bring their own buffs. More champions that hardly care about opponents having buffs. Like, Juggernaut, he can nullify or he cannot. He's gonna, if he works, he's gonna nuke whatever. He's ridiculously powerful. And the thing that kind of helped Mystic class retain their power, I think, is also releasing Tiger. Tiger's just filthy and ridiculous, man. Tiger can do some very filthy, disgusting things in this game. And again, she has surprisingly good matchups with a ton of the current defenders. Like Zola, for instance, can be Tiger very well. Like you can use Tiger against the Elena. You do need to be fairly skilled for that, but you can do that. And then obviously there's the Serpent, there's the Thanos. She can do both of those matchups very well. So I think Tiger has aged very well, and she is, playing a significant role in the game. I think, the resurgence of Hood as a 7-star, especially with the release of like Dark Phoenix, is a fairly good thing for the class. But overall, if you're looking at what has been added to them, is Caroline Dean. At the moment, Caroline Dean is like very hot commodity. She's quite nasty and annoying in defense, obviously with her, poisons and buff immunities and stuff like that. And again, she just takes rid of some of the biggest threats in the game. So, she definitely holds value. Now, she's the only Mystic champion added so far this year. But let's take a look at the previous year. And we have Shatra, who's, again, kind of like one of the more meta-relevant champions in the game. I wouldn't call her, let's say, top 4 like I did Thanos, Serpent, Onslaught, and whatnot. But she's, I think, top 10 for sure in the game right now. With how many different matchups she can take. She's not necessarily the fastest, but the way she delivers damage, nobody's kind of immune to it, and the way she finishes out her fights with unblockable specials and everything else, having that atrophy and nullify in her kit as well. I think she's doing incredibly well across the game right now, for sure, without a doubt. Now we have Enchantress, again, kind of like giving them more defensive power. Then we have the Spiral, which, again, I think is a fairly mid champion and exists as relevance only because Serpent is a thing. But still, we can absolutely see her being present in the game. Then one of the more kind of surprising success stories of recent times, I definitely can call Purgatory. Purgatory has been a relevant champion. Even if it didn't happen immediately after her buff, then, she has been present in Alliance Wars, she has been present in Battleground, she has been present in raids, she has been MVPing some incursions, and so on and so forth. So she has been doing better than I thought. I actually really like her buff. I just didn't think it would be as much relevant as it was. So that's definitely helping her as well. And overall, if we take a look at the Mystic class, there's like a huge amount of valuable, desirable champions that people do end up ranking. And not necessarily just as, niche choices or specific situations. For instance, Kindred has had a glow up on defense for sure. More often than not, he has proved himself to be a defensive problem within AI recovery times. Kushala is still going from strength to strength and is performing very well in a plethora of circumstances. Then we have obviously Longshot, who is, perfectly capable and relevant. Then Rintra, since his release as 7-star, has also made, Mystic class have some more defenders alongside Enchantress. Believe it or not, Ebony Maw still holds some value and still gets some use in the game as well, for sure. Now, Diablo has seen some resurgence since the release of Dark Phoenix, pending the amount of counters you have and pending the meta. America Chavez is still an absolute chad and is destroying champions and metas. Again, not every meta she's going to be, vital or significant, but more often than not, she absolutely is. Tiger is being absolutely filthy ridiculous. Then we have Werewolf by Night, and so on and so forth. So I do think Mystic currently is still the best rounded, more versatile class. And again, it goes down to the fact that Mystic champions are used to counter every single class, or just about. Or plenty of the Mystic champions are running amok through just about every class. I think one more thing that is helping Mystic class be as kind of like present as they are is probably an absence of new powerful science defensive threats. I do think that is kind of helpful to them as well, because science is kind of going a bit on the low. And since Cosmic has had a massive glow up, that has also facilitated Mystic presence in the game. So that is the way I view the game right now. And that also means that the next top 15 video is going to start with skill class. Stay tuned for that. tomorrow. And I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all been